Yeah, welcome to 4401. That's GVizzle. That's GVizzle, the eternal interrupter extraordinaire.
Incomparable and insufferable GVizzle. Yeah. And that's Tempest. And today, what were you going to say?
Do I not have any adjectives like Augustus or Imperator or the intellect? The font of wisdom?
So today on our episode, we're gonna we have a very controversial episode today.
Mm-hmm. That's why we got this fighty attitude going on.
It is. We are going to solve the age-old debate: dogs versus cats.
Yeah.
I am staunchly team dog. You are on the losing team, team cat.
I am a crazy cat lady.
Yes, you are.
I have 5 at the moment.
And I have 2 dogs. I have grown up with dogs my entire life. I've also had cats, and they were cunts.
Because you didn't understand them. That's what it is.
What's to understand? That's okay. We need like one of those chess things where we can say whose turn it is. You go.
Well, I'm thinking initially, okay, the only way we're going to solve this debate is with a boxing match.
A fight to the death.
Yeah, Logan Paul and KSI. Yeah.
A what?
Logan Paul and KSI, they had like this pretend YouTube beef, so they settled it by earning millions of dollars in the boxing ring. They beat each other up in the boxing ring.
I'm not going to box you. We're not going to earn millions of dollars. We're not even in the same country. We could have a virtual thumb war, or you could come at me with your wits, smart boy.
I'm not smart enough for that. I don't have witty smarts.
Here's why dogs are superior. They are used by the army. They're used by the police. They sniff out drugs. They sniff out cadavers. They are used for search and rescue. They are therapy dogs. They are bomb dogs. They are... Have you ever heard of a police feline unit? No, it's a canine unit. Yeah. Guard dogs, personal protection, service dogs, therapy dogs, guide dogs, hearing dogs, retrievers for hunters, herding dogs. They still use dogs to pull sleds. What do cats do? Cats sit on your chest if you live in a long-term care facility and they tell you you're going to die. At least dogs tell you in advance you're about to have a seizure, not a cat who, if it could speak, would sit on your chest and be like, you're going to die tonight, Agnes. That's what cats do.
I would like a cat to tell me I'm about to die, because then at least I could be prepared mentally, you know?
They will. They have those cats that like stock.
Right, listen, what you're doing, this is typical of these bloody dogites. This is the false propaganda they put out, and it's just this alt dog propaganda.
How is
misinformation?
It false propaganda?
Misinformation.
Are there not therapy dogs? Are there not service dogs? Police
You're creating
dogs?
False equivalencies. Add feline attacks, and you're just besmirching the good name of our feline warriors.
They don't have a good name. That's the problem.
They do have good names. Mine are called Padme and Hermione and Hester.
Now you're being obtuse.
You're being insufferable. Okay, but look, I think what you're doing here is creating false equivalencies between the animals, because dogs and cats have different purposes, different functions. They have different personalities. And even though we're all mammals in this, we have different like roles and responsibilities. I love those words. And then we have different purposes within society. And dogs are very much, they've basically evolved to be partners to the human race in terms of a lot of functionality and things like hunting and like with like I can't remember what you said. All the other dumb shit you said is all true. And but cats, they have a much more independent relationship with humans, and that's where a lot of the problems come in. Is that I find particularly staunch dog people don't understand cats and where cats are coming from. Cats are symbiotes with us. Like we coexist in the same ecosystem, but we live independent lives. We just happen to be in the same area. Whereas dogs and humans, they bond. like they become one unit. Okay,
which is why dogs are better.
No, it doesn't make them better. It makes them different.
No, it does make them better because, like, if a cat is just going to exist in the house with you, and it's not going to bond with you, what you are doing is just creating more responsibility for yourself because you are bringing in something that doesn't give a shit about you but expects you to feed it and clean up.
This is where the misunderstandings come in, is because they do appreciate you, they do bond with you, but not in the way that I was just describing. They show their affection for you and they trust you and they form relationships with humans. It just looks different and it functions differently. And it's just like, just because a cat would be perfectly fine, like living like down the street in the bush, and just as well as they are in your home, the fact is that they choose to be with you. And that is like, when you get the trust and affection of a feral cat, that is incomparable to what you get from a dog.
But most people don't get feral cats. Most people get domesticated.
Yeah, that's
most people do get domesticated cats. So if we're sticking it within terms of what the general public do.
No, we can't do this because this is my point. This is my point about the whole thing, is that the reason why people shop instead of adopt is because of their misunderstanding of cats. And then that's why they go get the domesticated cats rather than going to the shelter in a charity and getting an ex-feral cat. It's because
not everybody can handle a feral cat. Not everybody wants to do the work to rehabilitate a feral cat. Most people just want a ready pet.
They don't all need rehabilitation. There's a difference between feral and trauma. So like Padme and Hermione and Hester were all traumatized feral cats. Hester wasn't traumatized in the same way, and hers was mainly because she never got adopted. She was in the shelter for 2 years and nobody fucking wanted her because she wasn't the stereotype of what people want for a cat, like the cute, fluffy, cuddly, oh, look at me, my paws are up kind of thing, you know, tickle my tummy. People just want a dog that looks like a fucking cat. And it's because they don't understand what a cat is. And then, so Hermione and Padme have been a lot of work and effort for me, but that's because they were traumatized by humans who were cunts and neglected them and abused them. So that's where they're a lot of hard work. Sandra and Saffron were caught as little kittens, but they were feral, and they just like that. Like you just have to be patient with them. But
it doesn't the same versus going from a breeder or rescuing dogs. Like you rescue a dog that has trauma, and it's the same thing. But if the whole argument here is you are saying that there is a false equivalency between dogs and cats, we're never going to come to any consensus or conclusion. We're just going to sit here and tell stories about our cats and dogs.
But we don't need to come to a consensus or a conclusion, which is what I'm trying to say. Is that yeah, they fucking are. Because I like dogs and cats, right? I just prefer cats as pets in my house because I have more of an affinity for cats. Like I understand them more, and the demands of a cat suit me and my personality. I couldn't fucking walk a cat. I couldn't fucking walk a dog twice a day, but I have a chronic back condition, and I didn't I could do it now, but I couldn't 2 years ago. Again, like I'm not opposed to having a dog either. The reason why I've got cats in my life at the moment is just because of part of it's my autism, part of it is my back condition and that sort of thing. So with the autism, I find cats really easy to understand. And actually that's quite a common thing in autistic people, is that we can form bonds with animals quite like a lot easier than with humans. And Temple Grandin, I don't know if you know anything about her. Yeah. So for people who don't know, she was a cattle farmer, and she revolutionized cattle care basically. And she felt an affinity for cows, and she was able to understand their body language, their emotional states, and but she knew how to enhance their mental well-being. And so you get better food products out of having better cows, happier cows, and it's more ethical to look after your fucking animals. So for me, it was cats. It's just naturally, and I understand them. But also the reason why, because you can have dogs and cats in the same house, as you know. So the reason why I don't have a pet dog is because I literally couldn't walk it. 2 years ago, I could barely walk to the shop. So, I mean, the shop's like half a mile away, and I could manage it maybe once a week. So, yeah, so
we had, when I was a kid, we had a dog and a cat at the same time. And the dog was pretty much terrorized by the cat. Like the dog would just try to lie down and sleep, and the cat would just sit there staring at it.
Probably trying to figure it out.
Pounce on its neck. I had a friend of mine who had his cat was the runt of the litter, and he had a 120-pound mastiff. And he would get home from work, and his dog would have like blood streaming down his face from this 3-pound cat. And like the cat was asleep on an ottoman. And like the dog was playing with the ball in the house and like just running around the house having a great time. And then the ball kind of bounced onto the ottoman where the cat was, and the dog just stopped dead and like laid down and didn't go anywhere near the ball. Like the cat.
That sounds right. Yeah.
The cat was
it's a hierarchy.
King of the roost.
Yeah, and it's because of like there's a lot of things going on there in terms of the interplay between the animals, including the humans, and it's based on how the humans are interacting with both of the animals. It's based on how they've introduced the animals as well, what age they've both been when they've brought them both into the homes. Like, you know, sometimes the cat's there first and the dog's the interloper, for example, or I don't know. And a lot of it comes from misunderstanding the animals as well and not getting them to bond properly. So, because a lot of the times, like if anybody ever actually watches my, from here, I mean, I actually got loads of views, like 2,000 views so far. Nice. my chat with Help of Vancouver Vet. And we were talking about how, in part of it, basically about how cats aren't psychopaths. And how if you have like little rodents as pets and things, I saw that face. Like if you've got like, say, a pet chinchilla or something, or a pet rabbit, like the cat will understand that that pet is part of the family and won't try and eat it. Like, even though it's a food source for the cat, but because you're feeding the cat and you're removing competition for a food source, and it can see you bonding with the animal, then it knows that that animal is part of the family. And then it knows that it can bond with it rather than attack it and kill it.
Well, dogs are very much like that because they're pack animals. So once you introduce it as part of the pack, they understand that that's part of the pack.
Yeah, exactly.
So all your cats are they all female?
Yes.
Is there a dynamic between like female male cats that you would have to consider in bringing one into the house?
Trying to figure out how to word it carefully, because it's not really like a big thing. It's more the boy has to have his bollocks cut off, basically.
Oh yeah, for sure. Like same with dogs.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, first of all, you'll be like knee deep in cats by the end of the year if you didn't. And secondly, Toms that are not neutered, they're a fucking liability. Like
neutering, we're absolutely neutering our pets. So would a neutered cat be more difficult or easier to introduce to a female cat or another female cat? Like, is there a personality that clashes or not?
Not really, no. Like, because we used to live like near, so like in the middle of these fields, and there was a few male cats around, and but because they weren't part of our household, they were kind of interlopers, and there was a lot of arguments between the cats when they're establishing their territory. But it's all about how you introduce them. So the most important thing is if you bring another gender cat into the house, it's just about introducing them properly. That's literally
dogs are the same. They need to be introduced in like neutral territory. Otherwise, the dog that's here in the house feels like this is my house. You're, as in your word, an interloper. So it's best to introduce them in a neutral space, take them for a walk together, and get them accustomed to being together. But like bringing to, like when we got Gozer, we made sure he was male, because bringing another female in, like two female dogs will fight to the death.
Oh,
where males, one of them will back down, and with a male and female dog, the male will always submit to the female dog. Like even though Gozer outweighs Zool like 2-to-1, as soon as she starts to play, he flops and submits. And they engage in play. But like two female dogs will fight to the death, and it's even more so if one of them is a terrier. Like terriers are fucking crazy. Zool is part terrier, so like I have no doubt that, because she's still like, we've had a Gozer for 4 years, and the other day, so I was lying in bed, Gozer's at the top of the bed, Zool's at the foot of the bed, and Gozer's like chill, just lying down. Zool is like scratching the bed to like make her space. Her own back paw touched Gozer, and she turned on him Like, and he almost jumped out the window. He was like the cowardly lion in that scene where he runs in the hallway. Like, he scrambled to the top of the bed because he knew she was pissed, but she hit him.
She gaslighting him.
She's a bitch.
Okay, so basically, we had a few I say problems, but it was hard introducing Hester into the house because she was so feral. And trying to get her to integrate was a lot more difficult than the two kittens that we got.
So to the people or to the other cats?
To the other cats. So we had Hermione and Padme. And then when we adopted Hester, literally like about a month before the pandemic started. And because of her behavioral problems, she basically just hid in the attic room and just hid behind a sofa for 3 months. And then we had to let her come out in her own time, so we couldn't introduce them properly. And if you introduce the cats in the way that you described with the dogs, that wouldn't work. And a lot of people don't know how to introduce cats properly. So when we got the kittens, Sandra and Saffron, the Fosters, we were able to do it properly at last. So with Sandra and Saffron, they were basically in the spare room, and door was closed the whole time, and they were basically in there for about 4 weeks. So the other cats could hear them, and then the smells from the kittens would start coming through, and they would start to get to know the kittens without ever seeing them. And that's part of how you introduce them, is they learn through smell.
There is some of that to the dogs as well. So like when we introduced Gozer and Zool, it was on neutral territory, and then like Gozer walked through the house by himself so he could smell Zool around the house, and then Zool walked through the house so she could smell Gozer in the house, and then we brought them into the house together. We were very fortunate because Zool she's not amazing with bitches. She's not great with bitches, but she's always had, and she's always been really good with male dogs. So like that, she engaged him in play almost immediately, but it was play. Like when we brought him into the house, like her response was almost like, no, he needs to go home now.
Yeah, like, he's just visiting.
Yeah, like she would turn on him on a dime, and it's definitely not as often as it used to be. Like we used to have to be watchful, but she's still like the other night, she's still like,
yeah. I guess dogs do go through the steps a bit quicker than cats, I think, because it literally takes weeks to introduce the cats properly. And then because the kittens were feral, it adds another component. So that's going to make it even slower, because a domesticated cat would just accept like my human presence. But because they were feral kittens, they wouldn't. They'd been living on a fucking allotment for like the first 3 months of their life. Like they were orphaned and stuff. So like if you're fighting for scraps from basically you're a young child, you know, and then they would hide every time we went in there. And then so we couldn't put them into like cat carriers or anything. And because of Hermione's anger management issues, we couldn't put Hermione in a box and introduce them and all that stuff. So it literally took weeks and weeks to get them to.
Wow.
And then we've had like a really weird dynamic where, so we started leaving the door open and letting the kittens kind of explore. But first of all, Hester went in to explore their space while they were still in it. But they saw Hester. They were like, oh, that's another one of us. And then started trying to bond with Hester. And Hester was like, oh, I'm not sure about this. Hist swiped a few times and eventually took on the mother role, and then started to be in the matriarch and teaching them how to be cats, how to play and hunt, and how to like queue up for food, how to ask the humans for things. They've even adopted she does like a really weird meow sometimes, like a croak. It's like a meh. They've adopted that to get my attention. And it's just so unique to Hester that like they've clearly learnt that from her. And then because of that, the way the kittens have helped Hester, and Hester's calmed down. And then as they started moving through the house and going downstairs more, then Hermione was forced to interact with these two new kittens. But then because she could clearly see they were young, and she could understand that they were different to the other adult cats she's ever met. Now she's friends with the kittens, begrudgingly friends. It's like they hung around until they became friends with them. And she still hisses and swipes sometimes. But they were in the garden earlier, just sitting next to each other watching the pigeons. Yeah, it was really cute. There was like 4 of them in the garden. Like Hermione was sitting next to one, And then Padme was on top of the cat tree, and on the level below it, the other kitten was there, and they're all just watching these pigeons. It's fucking adorable. Yeah, and then because of that, Hermione's got used to Hester now, and so Hermione gets a lot less stressed about Hester being there because they were never able to be introduced properly, so they always had friction. But now they're kind of taken on colony behaviors because cats basically form communities, and like they're really good at forming complex social hierarchies in a colony. So it seems they've released reached critical mass for that, and kind of just everyone's calmed down and it's brilliant.
So how will it be if you adopt out, because you're just fostering? How will that affect the cats that are left behind? Like, will they understand that, like, oh, they've moved on? Like, or will it?
I think
because like dogs understand death, right? So like dogs understand, like if Zool was to get sick and Gozer could smell that sickness and he could be there, you know, if when we had to say goodbye to our first dog Dally, the vet came to our house. So like if that happened and one of the dogs was here, they would smell that and understand it. What they don't understand is that if we were just to like take one and leave and then she never comes back, they'd be like, well, where's the other dog? Where do they go? But they would understand that. But with cats, like, do they understand, or do they even care that another one is gone?
Well, we talk in terms of like missing and love and attachment and things. It's very different, I think, for a cat, and it's very hard for us to understand what it is they're thinking because they can't tell us. So we have to be really careful not to anthropomorphize them, which is really fucking hard to do because we've done it 1,000 times already in this conversation.
Well, but dogs, I mean, like, it's like dogs can smell sickness, like that's been proven.
I don't mean
but cats can too, right? Because they can tell when someone's gonna die.
But in terms of like when if at some point the fosters will get adopted out, then how are the cats gonna react to that? And I'm not. It depends, I think, on how they are with what it is that's missing. Because one thing is that cats love routine. This is why I think I like them, as being autistic. Again, like there's something we have in common. Like funny thing this morning, like it's a change in routine, and I'll click onto it. Like I'll notice it, and I can pick up on it.
Dogs, same. Like at 3:55 every day, I can already hear them stretching.
Time. And if you don't, they get confused if you don't follow through on it. So I think that the first thing they overcome is the fact that it's different, and then they'll go through a process trying to work out why it's different, what's missing, what's changed. Do I have to worry? Padme's main concern seems to be, am I going to the vet? Are they putting me in a box? No, it's okay. I don't have to hide. And it's also, it depends on what it is. So I think with the fosters, I think they'll be fine because they're not like they're just a colony. In a colony, people come and go, and I don't think it will bother them. It would just be the change in routine. If I died or my partner died or disappeared, it's a different thing, because when Joanna goes away to see her dad, if it's like more than a night, then Hermione, her personality and demeanor changes. She just kind of just gives up on everything. She gets really listless.
So there's a theory. I don't know how much stock there is to this, but the theory is that dogs always know when their owners are going to come home if they have a set schedule. Like when we had dogs growing up, my mom always left the house at the same time, came home at the same time. So like 10 minutes before my mom would come home, the dog would sit in the kitchen window and like wait and watch. And the same thing used to happen with my husband when he used to work in the office every day. The dogs would always kind of mill about the door around the time that he came home. And the theory is that it's by smell. Like when you first leave the house, your smell is the strongest. As the day progresses, your smell starts to dissipate. And they learn that when their smell gets to around this level, that's when they come home. So they associate that smell with seeing you again. So so that's the theory, is that's how they always kind of know when you're on the way home. So my dogs, because I work from home, when I leave, there's never any set time, right? Like if I leave to go visit my mom, I'll be back in like 5 or 6 hours. If I'm going out for the night, it could be 3 to 7 hours. If I'm going out grocery shop, so there's never any level of smell that they can associate with my homecoming. So even if I go to the mailbox and back, when I get home, they're like, "Holy shit!"
You were gone for so long.
Yeah, they're always crazy excited because there's never been any consistency in like when the smell gets to this level, we're gonna see her again. There's none of that. So they're like, what? You're back already?
and I think I can't speak for dogs because I don't know them in that detail, but certainly for cats, that could totally be part of it. But it's also based because cats are really contextual. So it's based on all the other stuff around them as well. Like even like the sounds that you're making, the kind of your demeanor and your actions and literally everything. Cats take in all the information.
Dogs are similar. Like when we get ready to go camping, like as they start to hear, because the day before we go camping, we start to load stuff into the camper. So then as they start to hear the camper door open and close, as we come into the house, they're kind of like pacing and nervous because they're like, oh, we're going to go on a long car ride. I don't want to go on a car ride. And then like when they see like there's an overnight bag that I pull out. So when that bag comes out, they're like, fuck, here we go. They start to make those associations. So they know, like, when I walk them, I use an extended leash. The only time they use their short leash is when they're going to get into the car because they're either going to the vet, they're going to, get their nails did, or they're going to camp. So as soon as the short one comes out, it's like
boring stuff now.
It's not only boring, it's like Gozer's always ready to go, but Zool's like, not getting in that car. And as we leave, like she knows the car is this way, right? The car is this way. Our walks are always this way. But if she's on the short leash, she goes out the door and she tries to head this way.
I'm leaving. Do you know, car rides are funny because like Hester hasn't been on a long car ride yet, so she's fucking lucky. But Hermione and Padme have moved house twice. Hermione throws a fucking hissy fit. She'll be just in her cat carrier, just going meow, meow, meow for fucking 2 hours, and then she'll give up for a bit, and then she'll carry on again. But like Padme, it depends on the time of day, because like I like to drive at night because there's just less cars and I can just get there quicker and it's just less bother. So I always take Padme with me, and she's quiet as anything. She likes driving down the motorway watching the lights. And I could just see her, like, she like sticks her face up to the grate of the cat carrier, and she's just going.
So we have, Gozer gets car sick, so we have to load him up with anti-nausea medication.
Oh.
And it kind of puts him to sleep. So he kind of like is a bit stoned for the duration of the ride. Zool is not in love with being in the car, so she never settles. Like the whole time she sits. And like even though, and on the way home from camping, she's exhausted, and we can see her like, but she won't lie down. And we give her CBD, which kind of takes the edge off a little bit, but she never
relaxes.
Fully relaxes. And then we had like a protector on the back seat of the car. So Gozer would always try to get behind Zool. So Zool had no space. Like she'd be like, oh my God, that's the door. So we bought 2 of them, which are like, they're like buckets. So they each have their own bucket, but then he still tries to get into her bucket.
Oh.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. Like, traveling with them is difficult. And then when like he comes out of the like anti-nausea fog, he'll try to like get into the front seat. And I'm like, no, Mike.
Yeah, we're trying to drive. You're gonna kill us.
Yeah.
I find it really funny just thinking of Zool like, I'm moving, but I'm not running. How is this working? What is going on?
And Zool, like, we live in Ontario. She was being fostered in North Carolina. So the rescue that we got her from, they had a transportation service that would pick the dogs up from these several different locations and drop them off. And like we had to go to Rochester, New York to get her. So that whole ride took place in a white van. And like for about a year and a half, every time she saw a white van, she would lose her mind. She was like, you're not coming to get me, motherfucker. Like,
yeah.
She couldn't handle white vans. So she couldn't. So like she's definitely better now, but yeah, she had a hard time. In it, there was this like, and I think it was one of the first horror books that I had read when I was a kid. And so like it was all about these like kids getting scooped up in white vans. So every time I saw a white van, I had like a Zool reaction where I was like, oop. Yeah. It's coming.
Yeah. They're going to offer me candy, and then, like, horrible things are going to happen. I'm going to get trafficked.
Nobody ever offered me candy. I used to have a recurring dream, however, that I was on my walk home. So, like, I would turn a corner and I could see my house, and, like, the garage door to my house was always open, and it was always really snowy. And there was a slow car trailing me, and I would, like, dive into the snow to try to hide from it. And as they, like, would drive by, they wouldn't see me because I was, like, hiding in the snow.
Shit.
Yeah, it was fucking terrifying.
How old were you?
One day, I was, like, walking home from school, and my garage door actually was open, and I was like, fuck that, not going home.
Did you dive in the snow straight away without thinking?
It wasn't snowy that day, so I was like, I was trying to rationalize it, like, it's not them.
How old are you?
I think it was in, like, the 3rd or 4th grade.
I don't know how old, like, that is.
Oh, that's like 8, maybe.
Okay.
7, 8. So, and, like, I had that dream for a year. Occasionally, like, every few years, I'll still have it, and I'm still, like, that kid again, walking home, and, like, there's 2 men in a car.
Yeah.
Moving slowly. And I was
but
like,
why is it 2?
Only 2.
My recurring dream I had when I was a kid, I was about that age. I thought, actually, maybe it's between about 4 and 8, I'd get this recurring dream, at least a couple of times a year. And I was, like, running down kind of like this really old sort of corridor with, like, really old stonework and an arch at the top. And I was being chased by Transformers. But then there was also, like, a Indiana Jones type thing. So, like, there's it was closing, like, from the long ends, it was closing from that end. And then I'd noticed it was closing from that end too. And I was going to get pancaked in the middle. But then at the last minute, I'd managed to climb out the top and hide in the hole in the top where the arch was. And then all the Transformers would get squished.
Oh.
Yeah. And that was the dream. And then I'd wake up, and then...
I'd wake up after the car went by, and then I would run the rest of the way home.
Hang on, you'd wake up after the car?
In the dream, I would run the rest of the way home, and then, like, I would wake up either. There was always 2 spots where I woke up: when I, like, hit home, or when the car passed, and I would, like, peek out of the snow like a groundhog, and, like, and then
like a meerkat. I had a weird dream once where I was about, like, 8 or 9, and I was being chased by a man in blue underpants, like Y-fronts, and I don't know why. It wasn't sexual or anything. It was just I was being chased by this guy, and then I'd fall over in the road, but I'd be so exhausted I couldn't get back up, and I'd have to climb up the curb, but it was like climbing up a mountain. And I couldn't get back up on the curb onto the pavement. But if I could get on the pavement, I'd be safe.
Huh. I often have a dream where, like, I'm trying to walk in the dream, but I'm walking so slowly that it feels like I'm moving backward.
Oh, I hate those. Oh, do you ever get the one where you can jump, but you jump so high, and then you realize you got to land again?
Yes!
Yeah.
And there are some where I'm, like, flying around the room, and, like, that feeling you get in your stomach when you're on a roller coaster. Like, I'm having that feeling. I'm like, how the fuck am I supposed to get down?
Yeah. What am I doing?
There's a game called Crackdown. I don't know if you've ever played it. It's a video game, and, like, in it you can jump really, really high, like, off buildings, and, like, the graphics are pretty good. So, like, there's been times where I've, like, jumped off a building, and I get that feeling in my stomach, and I'm just sitting on my ass playing a game.
You get that kind of, like, flip in your stomach.
Yeah.
Crackdown,
yeah. I think there's like 2 or 3 of them. And they're pretty good. I quite enjoy them. They're ridiculous, but they're good.
But yeah, I think dogs versus cats discussion, all the jokes aside, I think that, we've actually found to find fucking words. We managed to find a lot of commonalities between the 2 animals. And I think it's because we're all mammals. We all have a lot of similarities with each other.
We are.
I think one of the biggest differences, I think, is the way that humans interact with both species and what we've used them for. Because cats haven't evolved, really, from when they first walked out of the Assyrian desert, whereas dogs have. And we've bred dogs and manipulated them. But domestic cats haven't.
And dogs have more, like, jobs, right? Like, there's and what they've been bred for are different things, right? Like Dalmatians had a very specific purpose. German Shepherds and Rottweilers have very specific purposes, but they were, so it's like all the new kind of fancy bred dogs that are kind of just to be dogs, right? Like Zool, like Zool is a Shepherd Terrier, and she has a very strong prey drive because of that. Like she's part rat terrier, and they're so named because there was a president in the White House, and his rat terrier, or terriers, he may have had one or two, like cleared the entire White House of rats in a matter of like an hour or two. Like they are very effective at that. Where like Gozer's part Rottweiler, so he's a very good guard dog. Like they just have different temperaments, and like I think choosing a dog is different than choosing a cat, because like there are dogs that we have wanted, but they're like we're not the right owner for that dog. Like that dog is either too active for us, or needs more space than we can give it, or is too lazy for us. So the temperament goes into that decision, I think, a little bit more heavily than it does cats, because cats don't have, as far as I know, that distinction in their behaviors or personalities.
Yeah, there's a lot of weird breeding practices starting to happen, which I thoroughly disagree with, and it makes me fucking sick that people are doing it, because it's developing a lot of problems for cats in the future. They're not made, like, they're completely different to dogs. And then all of the stuff with the pure breed of the dogs and things that's fucking up dogs now, they're starting to do that to cats. They haven't fucking learned how we've wrecked so many species of dogs, and then now they want to do it to cats.
There are some breeds of dogs, like some bulldogs, who can barely even walk or breathe anymore because they've been bred so much. And like and people still like crop their dogs' ears, which is more like completely unnecessary. I think I'll have to double check. I think there's like a couple of breeds of dogs where cropping the tail is beneficial because their tails are so weak and fragile that they would kind of break. But like all of that was just aesthetics to make the dogs look tough, but it's what's contributed to a lot of the misunderstanding of certain breeds. Like pit bulls are lap dogs. Like they are so cuddly and gentle and loving, but because they were bred, they look tough, and then they crop them and cut their ears to make them look even tougher, and then they get the wrong people who own them. They get this bad reputation where like there's breed specific legislations all over Canada where like not only are pit bulls not allowed in Ontario, but dogs that look like pit bulls aren't allowed.
Ridiculous.
And I remember there's a thing every year they do. I don't know if they used to do two of them called Woofstock, and it was like this big dog kind of festival thing. And I took my niece there once when she was about 8, and there was someone asking people to collect signatures to stop breed specific legislation. And so my niece is like, okay, what does that mean? So the woman explains to her what breed specific legislation is. And my 8-year-old niece was like, that's like saying, because we're Portuguese, we're not allowed in the province. That's exactly
is it? Yeah.
No, she's like, her tiny little 8-year-old signature. She was like signing it off.
Fucking brilliant. I love the clarity sometimes that kids can bring to issues, you know? And because like one of the things I don't like seeing with cats is the ones with the squished faces, and then like what they did to bulldogs, and now they're doing the same thing, and the cats have breathing problems. And there's stuff where people declaw their cats. Yeah,
I was just going to ask you about that. Like that's a bad thing, right?
Very bad. It's the equivalent of like your phalanges. Yeah, cut them off. The whole fucking thing. That's what you're doing to the cat, and the cat can't defend itself. It has claws and teeth to protect itself. You remove its claws, that's one of the main things it needs to protect itself.
But if it's like 100% an indoor cat.
Nah, it's bad though, because it causes pain. It's like I said, it's literally like cutting your phalanges off. Yeah.
So why do vets do it? I guess the same reason they trim ears.
Demand. It's because this goes back to what I was saying, like people don't understand cats. They want an animal in their house that's cute and fluffy, and that they can stroke and pet whenever the fuck they want, regardless of what the animal wants. And they don't. But the cat won't do that if you cater to the cat properly. Our cats, we have 5 fucking cats in the house, and they claw the carpet sometimes, but they don't claw the sofa, because we make sure we have scratching posts, and they have areas in the house, and they've got sticks in the garden they can clean their claws on.
Well, with Zool, it took us a while to figure her out, because the the rescue told us she was a lab Rottweiler mix. And so like we had a Rottweiler German Shepherd mix before. We knew the personality. We were like, okay, it's going to be, you know, a loyal, loving, and kind of lazy dog. But she was not. Like when we first brought her home, it was the end of November and it was a really cold winter and she was really small. So we just couldn't take her for walks. It was too cold to walk her. So we would put her on her treadmill and she would run 12 miles an hour for half an hour.
Wow.
Get off the treadmill, take like a 20-minute power nap and be like, let's go again. Like she was just constantly on the go. And so we were like, we just can't figure this. We can't figure this dog out. And then my husband was like, I don't think we're the right people for this dog. Like we can't give her what she needs. And it wasn't until we were like, okay, you walk her in the morning. I'll walk her at lunch. We'll take her to the dog park. We'll walk her up to dinner until we developed that routine. And then she was like, oh, okay. Like she was happy and she was, you know, a tired dog is a happy dog. Like she was well exercised. And then her whole personality kind of chilled because she was getting out all that energy. So you got to like figure out your pets to what they need. It's like Gozer, he's very much not like that, right? He goes for a walk at lunch and then he plays with Zool and he's good to go. Like even there are times where like if it's a nice night, because I usually go for my me time walk after dinner. And like occasionally I'm like, I'm gonna take a dog with me. And I'll like pick up a leash and Gozer's like, nah.
No, I'm good.
Yeah. And Zool's like, coming up. I got you.
I got you, Mum. Yeah, I think I thought of another point with the claws as well. Like even if your cat's an indoor cat, they still need their claws because they use their claws for climbing and playing. So you know, if they jump on a bookshelf, for example, and then they slip, they need their claws to save their life. You know, and then it's funny as well if you're not expecting it, and then you got to tickle their tummy, and then they latch onto you. But
we had a cat. The cat that I grew up with would hide under the sofa, and when I would walk by, it would run out and like attach onto my legs, and then just like stick his claws in.
But you can stop him doing that. Like I don't personally know how because I haven't had a cat do that, or have a cat habitually do that. But you can train them to stop doing that.
Well, it happened 37 years ago, so I think it's done.
Yeah. No, but I mean, for other people listening, like you know, there are methods available. That, like, if your cat's doing a behavior you don't like, it's either you're doing something wrong, or you need to cater for the cat in a different way.
And that's a very important point with dogs as well. Is that if your dog is misbehaving, it's not that it's a bad dog or the dog is misbehaving. Is that dog has not been trained not to do that thing, or has not been trained properly, has not been exercised thoroughly, has not been like. It's never the dog's fault. Exactly.
And it's like one of the things is like don't say like what people trying to do with their cats is say no to it. Like, no, don't fucking do that. Don't do that. Like, or if a cat grabs onto your hands and then you're like, no, don't. But then you push the cat away and then you treat it like you do the wrong thing. Or they get a spray bottle is people's favorite. Spray your cat with fucking water if it does something you don't want to do. Can you imagine if you went up to your husband and did that? Like, oi, fucking do the dishes properly.
I do that.
Is he declawed as well?
Modification is what we call it.
Yeah. That's what you call it.
So one of the ways to teach a dog their bite reflex is, you know, get into play with the dog, and then when it bites to kind of like, ow. So that loud sound kind of teaches them like at that pressure, that's too much. Right. So like we less teach them like no and more specific commands, right? Like if he's got something in his mouth, it's off or drop it, and that, right? So like there's specific things, but it takes work to be able to do that training. Like you can't just. I think people expect dogs and cats to just know things.
Yeah, but they don't fucking speak languages, do they?
No, and like what's so rage-inducing is like after the movie 101 Dalmatians came out, people wanted to get Dalmatians, and then they got them and they're like, oh, this is a lot of work, and then they dropped off all their Dalmatians. During the early days of the pandemic, people were like, I'm home, I can get a pet. They got these pets, like shelters were running out of animals, and then when they got back to work, they're like, okay, bye, and they dropped off their pets again. It's like, how
it's pathological.
Like, they're animals, but they also need love, right? Like they're not just for entertainment. If you wanted to just have something in the house, get a fucking stuffed animal. Like they require
something.
They require your time, your energy, your patience, your love, your training, your everything, all of that.
And it's not just that they require it either, it's that they fucking deserve it. They're living creatures. You know?
Absolutely. I mean, they're on this earth for such a short time. Like,
Yeah,
gotta make it fucking count, right?
exactly. You got to give them a good life. And then, oh yeah, I was going to say something about going back to. I got hung up on declawing, but going back to you need to understand your animals. Like you're talking about trying to figure out Zul's breeds and stuff and what she needed. And with Hester, we didn't realize this until we got the Fosters. Hester needs kittens in her life, and which is why I think she'll actually adjust really well when the Fosters move on, because they're growing up, so they're going to get less active as they become adults. But I jokingly say this, but I kind of also am half serious. I think Hester has ADHD. Like, she doesn't fucking sit still. She wants constant attention, and she's always fidgeting. And as soon as she met the kittens and started playing with them and nurturing them, she calmed down. Like, they used up all of her energy. And then she's just a much calmer, happier, more relaxed cat, and she's easier to live with.
Zul was the same, because she's still a bit of a shit show, but she was much more anxious before Gozer came around, where he has helped calm her down, because there are things that she used to react to, but because he doesn't react, she's like, okay, so she would take cues from him. But the inverse is also true, because there were things that when we brought him home for the first couple months didn't bother him at all, but they bothered Zul. So he was like, what? I should be upset by this? Okay. Yeah. So now they've kind of brought each other to that place.
Yeah, I think what Hester's going to need is basically like a merry-go-round of successive kittens, like a revolving door.
So let me ask you a question. How difficult is it to bring a kitten into your house? Because like puppies are assholes, and it takes a lot of time and a lot of work and a lot of like late nights to finally get a dog to.
Oh, surprisingly,
it's like having a newborn, right? Like when we brought Gozer home, he wouldn't sleep through the night. He was crying all night because he didn't have his litter mate. So I would have, and we were crate training him. So I would have to put his crate right beside my side of the bed. I'd have to stick my fingers into his crate so he could like see and smell that they were there, and then he would kind of fall asleep.
That's heartbreaking.
And it's like it's tough to like crate train a dog and get that routine going. Like, how is it for cats? Like, do they just instinctively know this litter box is for me?
No. But it's basically it's based on a lot of factors. Okay, so it's based on your understanding of the cat, like of how to bring kittens into the home. So you need to research that thoroughly before you do it, and then it will be a much easier process. But also, you need to have a good cat charity that you get the cat from. And like I'm adamant, go to a feral cat charity. You will have a better relationship with the cat if it's an ex-feral, and you'll get just a much richer relationship with them than you would from a normal domestic cat from a breeder, and it won't cost you any money either. And they'll just have more of a personality. But anyway, getting sidetracked. So the cat charity that we use, they don't adopt out their kittens until they get to a certain age. I can't remember how old it is, but they litter train the kittens. The kittens are good to go by the time they go to the new home. Okay. And then what the cat charity does is she does this herself. She vets every single household before she goes out. She's got a new rule that she put in a couple of years ago of like, they have to be indoor cats now. She won't do outdoor cats anymore. And so you have to prove that they will be indoor cats. And then she'll make sure that the environment in the home matches the cat's personality. So if it's like an extroverted, boisterous cat, and you've got kids and stuff or a dog, then that'll be fine. But if it's a more like quieter, shyer cat that's a bit nervous, then perhaps a quieter home and maybe a calmer dog, older children, that sort of thing. And then so she'll make sure the cat's going to a good home. So all of that will make it easier for you to take in the kitten. But one of the big keys is that when you get the kitten, don't let it run around the house. Put it in one room, close the door, and let it get to another room for at least 4 weeks, like literally just that one room for 4 weeks, get it scent in everything. And if you've got other animals in the house already, after a couple of weeks that they've got their scent into everything in their room, swap some of the things over. Like if you've got a dog or a cat, put their blanket in with the kitten and take the kitten's blanket and give it to the other animals. And then they'll start trading smells. And then of course, like again, if it's a good cat charity, they'll already be litter trained. And then as you go in to feed them all the time, they'll get to know you because you've got to feed them at least 2 or 3 times a day. And then you'll start to bond, sit with them, pet them and stuff like that. And then they'll start learning all the good behaviors. And then Yeah, and then as they grow up, then you have to see what the personality is like to see what issues you need to tackle. But it's nothing like what you experienced with Gozer.
The dogs, I mean, especially because with our first dog, Dally, she was rescued. She was a rescue, and the guy who rescued her had a dog training facility. So all the dogs he would rescue, he would involve in the training. So by the time we brought her home, she was already like paper trained and she could sleep through the night. She was still like the first night, because she was away from her space. Yeah. She was still, crying a lot, but you get through that. And then when we brought Zool home, because they were a rescue, she was fostered on a farm, so they did nothing with her. So we were starting from scratch, and like we couldn't even get her to walk out of our front door for 2 weeks on a leash because she was so nervous. And like it was just her personality. Like she was such a nervous dog. And I'll kind of do the same thing. Like I hate when people go to breeders and puppy mills are so prevalent, and you never know what you're going to get. Just get a mutt. Just get a mutt. Yeah, exactly. Nobody cares about your fancy breed. Just get a mutt. They have better health outcomes. They live longer. They're not taking on the like shit from different personalities. I get it if you need a hypoallergenic dog, but that's rescued. That's rescued. So with Zool, we rescued her, but she was young when we brought her home. But she slept through the night pretty easily. Like because she was so nervous, she didn't want to make any sound. But yeah, like we couldn't get her out of our front door. I would have to set up like treats leading out the front door, like every foot, and she would come around the corner and she would get one and then go back around the corner, and then she would stop.
Yeah.
It took a long time to work on that with her, and they didn't do any of that. So like the potty training and pee training was a lot of work. With Gozer, he was a farm dog. Like we wanted to rescue, but we just couldn't find. We spent months looking for the right rescue, but it had to be a male. It had to be, kind of young for Zool. Totally. So it was harder to find. So we just found him on a farm a couple hours away, brought him home. We think now, because usually male puppies go first, like they're the first to go. And it was just him and another dog left, his litter mate. And his litter mate was very much like Zool, like very, very nervous. We would have brought, if we didn't already have Zool, we would have brought them both home. But like we had two nervous dogs. Yeah. So totally. When we saw like Gozer, when we brought him home, he was figuring out from Zool. But like we have a series of baby gates kind of set up so where they can't go. But he's fucking shit show. Like he just runs right into the baby gate and knocks it over.
It's a fucking legend.
Yeah, so like his training was very different, and like from the very beginning he was ready to go, and like we were walking him down busy streets and it didn't faze him. But then after he sprained my foot, he went 5 months without being lost, so he lost all of that
all that learning and experience.
So he's now like a bit more nervous than he should be because he lost all of that time.
Oh no. And it's annoying when like you get setbacks like that, I think, because I think this is where cats can recover quicker than dogs, because cats are so contextual compared to dogs have more pervasive moods.
Well, dogs very much live in the moment, but I mean, they live in the moment, but I don't think they forget. Like a couple of years ago, my neighbor, he was over at our neighbor's house, like his BFF lives next door. They have a pool. They also have a chimenea. So my neighbor decided to light his chimenea with gasoline. So he set himself on fire, and like he was perfectly fine. He was totally fine. Like as soon as the smoke went, like the fire just went whoosh, he jumped into the pool, put himself out. He jumped into so there was stress, big smoke, jumped into the pool, steam. Gozer almost jumped the fence to come home. And since then, he cannot handle the smell of smoke. I can't walk him at night in the winter because he can smell it from the chimneys, because we all have wood burning fireplaces. And then during the summer, like in the evenings when he smells people with their fire pits, he's like, nope, 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 nope.
I wonder if there's a way to apply like some psychology to it, like therapy stuff, where you can habituate him to it.
He's gotten much better. So if he can see it, if he can see the fire, he's okay with it. So like when we do a fire in our backyard, he's fine. We have a wood burning fireplace. When he's around that fire, he's fine. At campsites, he
sees you doing it, and
because he sees us. If we are walking around like a campsite and he sees and can smell smoke and he can't see it, the fire, he gets a little bit like anxious. So he's got that anxiety about it. But like the next few times he went to my neighbor's place, he wouldn't go to that side of the backyard. So he would like run up and down, but not turn. So like he got fucked up. Like he got he got totally.
And you know what? That's how his genes survive, though. Like obviously, if he's capable of procreating, his ability to learn and to have that anxiety to those things. That's how his species fucking survives.
Yeah, absolutely.
You survive more from flight than fight, I think. When they talk about survival of the fittest, people really misunderstand it. It's the ones who live and survive, not the strongest, not the people that fight.
Are you looking for fun new glasses that won't break the bank? Go to zlul.com. They have daily flash sales. You can find frames as low as $2. Prescription, non-prescription, sunglasses, they have it all. Use my promo code to save.
And it's interesting that you say that because like with Zool and like she hated that like 10-hour drive in a white van. So every time she saw a white van, she was like, not today, Satan. Like
Yeah.
the I don't think the anxiety is still there, but the association to it still is.
And it's there's a really good book written by two of my favorite scientists. It was the Hunter-Gatherer's Guide to the 21st Century. And it basically, the whole book is about how it's about humans, but I think it applies to all of our pets and stuff as well. And about how the modern world has changed so rapidly and so much. Our little hunter-gatherer brains that were running around the savannah, running, jumping, climbing trees, hunting stuff, like 150,000 years ago, we're still those animals. And we've got all of this new shit now, and it's fucking with our minds. And it's doing the same, I think it's doing the same thing to some of our pets as well.
Probably. Like there's something I read that if you are feeling really stressed out, scientists have discovered, researchers have discovered that if you were to go camping with no electronics, just like you and nature for a week, it kind of like resets your entire system.
Yeah. So
that like you don't have that that external stress.
Yeah, exactly.
And I mean, dogs are very much the same. Like Zool being fostered on a farm didn't have, like for the first 10, 12 weeks of her life, she didn't see cars. She didn't see any of those things. So when she first saw them, she...
Yeah, what the hell is that?
Yeah. Where Gozer, the farm he was on was like across the street from like a reception hall or place where they would often do fireworks. So when we first brought him home, fireworks were no big deal because he used to hear them almost every night. When we brought him home and he went like months and months and months without hearing fireworks, the first time he did, he was calm until Zool freaked out. And he was like, oh,
this is bad. Oh my God.
Yeah, like they've learned those things. But Zool still like, she very much, so we have like once a month, it's like big garbage day where you can put out large items to take. Oh. And so like, we'll walk around our neighborhood on like a regular day and she knows what's where. And then the next day, if we walk around and it's big garbage day, she's like, that wasn't there yesterday. And she won't walk near it. Like she'll kind of go around it because she doesn't know what it is. She doesn't trust it. Where Gozer will walk right up to it and be like,
yeah, what's that? That's interesting.
This is why I can't walk them together. Like their personalities are
You'd
so
be like
different.
this.
I'm constantly like that. Because like everything he wants to see, she wants to run away from. If she wants to run away from something and gets nervous, he wants to soothe her. And his method of soothing her is kind of like getting close to her. She doesn't want anybody close to her. So she turns on him. And it's like, what?
Yeah, I'm just trying to be nice. I think it certainly, like when you've got like, if you've got a big area, big fields and stuff, that's definitely good for dogs and cats. Because when we lived in the middle of those fields, and Hermione and Padme were outdoor cats the whole time. And the thing is now we're back in a more urban area. Like that's why we chose now. We can't deal with that. Humans are cunts. Let's keep them as indoor cats and get a cat, like, because you can't trust, like in the modern day, you can't trust cats to be able to go around and run around the neighborhood and be safe. Like even though it's like a 20 or 30 mile an hour zone here, people still drive like dickheads and run cats over. Shitty little kids around here that have gone feral in the pandemic will probably chase cats and cut their tails off, like, that happens.
We have
sometimes.
Coyotes. So
exactly. Coyotes. But we don't have the natural predators here for cats, although Padme did nearly get eaten by a fox once. But that's because she sniffed their cubs and she learned don't go near the cubs. Because foxes actually they bond with other animals pretty well if there's no competition. So
Man, foxes are so cute.
they're fucking amazing, aren't they?
They're so cute.
And then foxes and cats can be friends. But because
Foxes and dogs, same.
yeah, and then but because like you got to create the environment for it to happen. So you got to make it clear there's no competition for resources, and you feed them together, and then they'll realize that they're not competing, and then they'll coexist.
Yeah, I mean, dogs are very much pack animals. So as long as you integrate them into the pack, they kind of have that. They know who's who and what's what. Like they figure it out.
Yeah. But Padme was like basically hunting stuff through one of the bushes one day, saw these little orange fluffy things and wanted to investigate them. Like, oh, they look cute. Let's go say hello. And so I was sitting on my computer in the living room, just doing some work, and then I heard this bark, and then just like it was like it because I'd never heard a fox bark before, and I was like, that didn't sound like a dog. So I legged it outside, and as I run around the corner of the house, fucking Padme zooms past me, and a mother fox hot on her tail, and Padme's like shit, and just goes straight up the tree, and then I just sort of like clapped and yelled at the fox, and it ran off. And then Padme was like, fuck you.
There's a fox who's in our neighborhood, and I usually see it like on Saturday mornings or weekend mornings when I'm walking the dogs. And like it's the cutest thing because I'll see her, I don't know, going like this way, empty-handed, and then like 20 minutes later I'll be in a different part of the neighborhood and I'll see him like walking back with like a chipmunk in his mouth. I was like, oh, good
amazing.
You got your breakfast.
Got the kids brekkie sorted. I got followed by a fox once when I was on a night out, and it was like on South Sea Seafront, and we were in this nightclub, and I'd had an argument with my girlfriend at the time, and so I was like, fuck it, I'm going home, and then I drunkenly left the club, and then realized I didn't have any money to get home. And anyway, so I found a hedge to go have a lie down in, and just thought, oh, I'll just go to sleep here for a few hours, and I get up in the morning and carry on walking home. It's a 5-mile walk, okay? And but then I was lying in this hedge, between this hedge and a wall, and then I heard some rustling, and I was like, oh, don't be a homeless person. Not because homeless people are bad, I just didn't want to
invade somebody else's territory.
Basically, yeah. Anyway, and I look up and there's a fucking fox shuffling towards me. So I get out of the hedge, and as I start walking down the road, and the fox is walking 10 feet behind me, just following me down the road. And then I think it's like, my mate described it in a really nice way. He said he probably wasn't following you, but you're probably going the same direction, and he was just keeping his distance behind you.
We've had a few coyote run-ins. And there was one, we saw one in like, we see them in the ravine, and I used to because in the middle of the day, the ravine, there was never anybody in it. So I would let Zool run off kind of leash free to kind of explore. But then one day, like she's exploring, and I see this tail kind of around a blind corner. So I call her back, because if it's another dog, I don't want that interaction. So I'm about to put her back on leash, and as I'm clipping the leash, I get a glimpse of the rest of the dog, and it was the biggest coyote I've ever seen in my life. so I'm like, like making a ton of us to scare it off. But we've had several interactions, and there was one time, there's a dog not far from us that's always just lying out on its front lawn. Like it's never leashed. It just kind of like chills out on the front lawn and knocks when it wants to get back in the house. And so we were walking one day, and I saw that dog, who never gets up, just got up and like hauled ass behind us. And when I turned, there was like a coyote sneaking up.
Shit! Oh my god!
Yeah, like they're little sneaky little bastards. But when we first moved in, like our neighbors were told us, so like if you've got small pets, keep an eye on them. If you see signs up for like cats missing or small dogs missing, they're probably not missing.
Yeah, probably someone's lunch.
Yeah. So like we've had, but yeah, like we see them often, and like as they've started to build up our community a little bit more, they're kind of displacing them out of their forests and whatnot, so they're getting bolder. And like one night there was one like just walking down the front in front of our house, and like I was like 10 o'clock at night, and I kind of took a pee. We were doing some stuff in our backyard, so I was like, I'll just let Zool out the front to go pee, just before we got Gozer. And so I let her out the front, and like whenever that would happen, she would go to the boulevard, pee, come back home. So she goes to the boulevard and then starts hauling ass, and I'm like in my pajamas and slippers, I'm like, I see she's chasing a coyote. Like she saw it and was like, fuck you, and just started chasing it down the street. When it turned a corner, she kind of turned around and like walked home. Like
yeah, look what I did.
Yeah. I did that.
Oh, wow. That's amazing. I have to send you a video later of a guy. I can't remember if it's a coyote or a mountain lion or something, or a cat, like a big cat. But like he gets accosted on a mountain trail and he's backing up, and then it's just walking towards him because it had cubs, and he got too close to the cubs, and then he's just walking towards him, and it follows him for like half a mile.
Jesus.
Yeah.
I watched a video. So someone had their like security camera in the back of their house, and they had. So this woman was at home with her 3 beagles. They were all hanging out on the sofa, just watching TV. And then her beagles started to act unusually in the house. She's like, what's going on? And they were she realized that she hadn't locked her doggy door. So when she went to look at the security footage, a coyote had jumped up on the fence, gotten into her house through the doggy door, was in the house for 3 minutes, and then came back out and like hopped the fence again and left. But in those
the beagles knew.
Oh, so then like I see that and I'm telling my husband, I'm like, we're never getting a doggy door. Like
yeah. Especially after, have you seen Pet Cemetery too?
Yes.
Yeah. Well, I was going to make a doggy door.
No Pet Cemeteries.
They have a pet, like, have you seen The Prisoner? I think it's from the 60s or 70s. You not heard of that? I thought it was like an international thing.
It sounds familiar, but I've not seen it.
I'm a man, not a number.
It's familiar, but I've not seen it.
A big white ball just bounces and suffocates people till they're dead.
No, I've not seen it.
Wow. I thought it was an international thing. Guess it didn't get to Canada.
I've heard of it. I just haven't seen it. I haven't seen all the movies.
Yeah. Oh no, it's a TV show.
Oh, no.
Okay. It ruins my whole anecdote. Because it was filmed in North Wales. This place called Portmeirion. I mean, I forget I'm talking to listeners as well as you, and they have a pet cemetery there. And it's just so weird seeing it. Like it was just so creepy. No,
so when we lost our dog, and like some people have like buried their dogs in their backyard. Like someone I have chatted with. Her dog used to always be out front, and then I kind of noticed I hadn't seen her dog in a while. I saw her, I asked her about it. The dog passed away, buried in the backyard. And if I buried one of my dogs in my backyard, I could never move. Like
you'd be stuck there.
Yeah, I would feel like I can't. Like it's not like I'm gonna exhume the dog and bring it with me, so I couldn't move. And then when we had to say goodbye to Dally, the vet asked us if we wanted to keep her ashes, because if we wanted to keep the ashes, they would cremate her separately. If we were okay with not, then they kind of, all the dogs and pets that they had to put down, they would cremate together. And so we thought about it. And then I was like, no, I don't want to keep her ashes, because then again, there's that obligation of like, okay, well now we have this urn with her ashes. That are we just going to keep adding to that with every pet until we have this like
a whole smorgasbord,
our own little cemetery? And then like, what do we do? Like, is there ever a time where we would feel good about saying like, do you want to just throw it out or like put it away? Like it would just felt so like, I would rather just say goodbye. And like they scooped her up in her favorite blanket, and they took and they're like, she'll go with her blanket. And I know they're trying to make us feel better, right? Yeah.
No, but it's good for the like. I mean, I guess after she'd been put down, they took her away then with the blanket.
Yeah. So because she had cancer, so they had shaved a part of her belly, and so like, and we were outside. Like it was a September evening, but it was a little bit cool, so we didn't want her to be cold. So we put down her favorite blanket, and she lay down on the blanket, and we were able to say goodbye. And then the vet, she was 100-pound dog, and like the vets that came, like collectively they were 200 pounds, right? So like trying to see them carry her was but we were in no position to help. So they kind of scooped her up in her blanket, and then a couple weeks after it had happened, they sent us all of her paw prints. Like they took her paw prints before they cremated her, so we have them.
Oh, that's really nice. That's maybe a bit teary actually. Sharp.
I know. It's devastating. Like Zul's gonna be 8 in September, and so like she's at a place now where I'd have to start like investigating senior food, and like
Yeah.
I remember being in like being in PetSmart, and like Dally at the time, because Dally was a bigger dog, right? So the life expectancy is different. And so I was asking an employee there, I was like, at what age do you do like senior dog food? And then like, well, how old is your dog? I said, oh, she's 7. Or how big is she? I said, she's 100 pounds. Like, oh, now's the time. And I like just started crying.
Oh.
She can't be in the senior.
It's not happening. I think
I'm not ready for that.
what I'm finding really helps me because Padme is basically the best friend I've ever had in my life, and that sounds really stupid for an adult man to say that, but I've never bonded.
It doesn't, not at all.
But it's and before Padme, I'd had obviously a lot of trauma growing up and stuff, and I had attachment issues. I've never bonded with something or someone before, and so the relationship I've developed with Padme is really important to me, and I'm just like. And a lot of my emotions and things are new to me, and I've been developing them because I had such strong defense mechanisms. Like, I don't know if I'm upset or angry sometimes, or if I'm happy or sad. Like, a lot of the time, like, it's taken me years to understand what my mind and body are actually trying to communicate to each other. Part of that's autism and part of that's defense mechanisms. But anyway, all of this to say, what's really helping me is a stoic practice, which is you try and imagine the awful bad things that could happen so that when they really do happen, this is different to catastrophizing, because catastrophizing is thinking about unrealistic things that probably aren't going to happen. But one day Padme will die. And between now and the next 10 years, it's going to happen. So part of the stoic practices is imagining what that would feel like and putting yourself in that position so that when the inevitable happens, it's not a shock. You're not experiencing things without knowing what they feel like. It's like with a poison. You give yourself a bit of poison and then you develop an immunity to it, so that when the grief will happen, I'll be familiar with it. And then
I know because we lost Dally, I know exactly how it's going to feel.
Yeah.
And I'm already pretty sure I'm gonna need therapy. Like, it was, like, I think Dally took me by surprise, but when I grew up and had dogs, I was young and I didn't connect with the dogs the way that I had with Dally. And even my connection with Dally was not as strong as it is with Zool. Like, Zool, I was already, like, Dally was kind of more my husband's dog. When we first brought her home, he was at home for 3 weeks with her, so they bonded more. And I would walk her, and I loved her and absolutely loved her. She was a fantastic, fantastic dog. But, and when we had to say goodbye, I was a fucking mess. Like, my dad had passed a couple months earlier, and my mom was like, "You cry more for your dog than your dad." And I was like, "Sorry, but like, yeah." And it was awful. It was awful. But with Zool and Gozer, I know it is going to be 1,000 times worse. Because they're very much my dogs, right? Like, Zool's the reason I lost 140 pounds, right? Like, she was a life changer for me, and we constantly bonded. Very shortly after we brought her home, I started working from home full time, so we were together 24/7. Gozer also became like, he picked his person, he picked me, and I hated him with a fire, the fury of 1,000 suns, when we first brought him home. So when he got into my heart, he got in deep because he had to work to get there. So like, he's
entrenched.
He is. And like, because of his size and because of her size and his age and her age, there's a chance they could go
the same time.
And like, I don't even know how. Like, just when I think of what it was like with Dally, and knowing that it's going to be worse, like,
it's, and the thing is like, you have to think about it because it will happen. And
denial doesn't make it any better, right? Like, it's
that, and also being aware of it, being cognizant about it, means that you'll appreciate the time you do have. And like, you're constantly reminding yourself, like, of all the really good times that you've had and all the shit you've been through together. I mean, like you say, with Zool being such a fucking life changer, like, she saved your life, basically.
Yeah, absolutely. absolutely. And like, and because she was, and I know this, comes back to the
anthropomorphism.
It shouldn't be such a hard word, anthropomorphizing her, whatever. Because she was also a nervous dog and very anxious, I felt more protective of her. So, and like, I tried to desensitize her to stuff, and it's not like I would poor baby her, but like she always had like an even softer spot because she was such a nervous dog. Where Gozer's kind of rough and tumble, so like he's got that spot in there, but he's rough and tumble. It's just.
And Zulda, like, you had to do the mother role to her and like help her and kind of like therapy her out of her issues and stuff. It creates a stronger
because
bond.
she was such a nervous dog, getting her to trust us was more work, right? So like when I had to work harder for her affection, like Gozer was in love with all of us the moment we brought him home. Zul was like,
I
don't know. But I don't know. Yeah, I just like every time I think about it, and like I knock on wood, hopefully it's still many, many years away. But every time I think of it, I start to get like a little.
Your throat hurts, and you're like, oh.
Yeah, like I gotta go hug my dogs now. And so with Dally, as she got a little bit older, like we would both trade off on walking her, right? Like I'd walk her one day, my husband would walk her another day. Like if there were a day we were both tired, we may have taken her to the backyard to play instead of going for a walk. Whereas then when she was gone, we were both like, we didn't do right by her. We should have walked her more.
You start questioning yourself, and
like we know we gave her a good life. Like she was and people would meet Dally and be like, oh, you could tell she's a really happy dog and she's very connected to the two of us. And she was very, she was a very loved dog. But you always think of like, what could we have done better, right? Like it's like Liam Neeson at the end of Schindler's List. I could have sold this ring. How could I have done better for this dog?
But the thing is like, I mean, it's a normal human reaction, but also like you probably gave her the best quality of life she could have had, and like because life isn't all about longevity or health and all that sort of thing. It's about the quality of the time that we're here. I'd rather die at 50 and have the most rich, vibrant life imaginable that I can possibly get than die at 100 and just not do anything.
And I think of my grandmother, right? Like my grandmother lived to be 97, but she never experienced anything. So it's like, what's that cliche? It's not the years in your life, it's the life in your years.
Exactly.
Right? Like my grandmother lived a long time, but she was afraid of life. Like she never had a hamburger, right? Like she never, she was just afraid of just trying anything that she didn't grow up with. She ate in 2008 the same way she ate in 1938, right? She just was scared. So but like even days, like there are days where it's too cold or too hot to walk the dogs, or if like one of us isn't feeling well, we won't walk the dogs, and then like I'm apologizing to the dogs all night, like I'm sorry I didn't walk you today, I promise I'm gonna be tomorrow.
I'm such a failure, I'm sorry.
And if I like went to like I don't like to make plans often on Saturday nights because that's when I go visit my mom. So if I go, because I don't want to be away from them for like a chunk in the morning, a chunk in the evening. What?
Totally. Yeah, I get it. I mean, when I was doing the graduate training program and like I had to keep going away for this fucking training constantly, literally every other week, I'd have to go away for like 5 days. And I had to have so much time away from the cats. I started getting depressed. But like I do like with how animals having their own personalities and who they choose to bond with, because Hermione was unequivocally my partner's cat. Like when she got here, she just straight away, you could, like, even though they were feral and they were scared, but you could tell that she had an affinity for my partners to start with. And my partner always wanted a calico cat, and she'd never had one before, so she wanted her calico cat, and that's why we ended up adopting them. And then obviously I got Padme, but as soon as I met Padme, I was in love with her because we went to go to the cat charity and got off on a tangent, but so they opened up the cat carrier they were in so that we could, like, they could sniff us and they could see us and everything. Padme jumped out the cat carrier and hid under the armchair, wouldn't come out. And I was like, that's my fucking cat. I want that one.
Dally was the only dog Dally and Gozer we got to meet. Zul we didn't get to meet first. And admittedly, had we, with her nervous tendencies, we may not have brought her home. So I'm kind of glad that we didn't. But when we went to meet Dally, we actually didn't go see her. She had a litter mate named Penny. So it was Penny and Penny's sister. That was Dally's name at the time, Penny's sister. So she didn't even have a name.
Oh my God.
Yeah. So when we got there, they had both. And then the guy who ran the rescue had said, like, yeah, like there was a couple who had come to see Penny's sister, but he's like, as I was hearing them talk, they wanted a small dog. And I was trying to tell them, like, this is a Rottweiler German Shepherd. This is not a small dog. And they're like, no, look at her. She's small. And like, she's not going to stay small.
Yeah.
So he wouldn't let them take her. So then when we got there, we got to see both of them. And like, we were there for Penny. But then when we saw like how they played and how they interacted with one another, like Penny's sister was just cleverer. And so like, that's our dog. And it was my husband's very first dog. It was my first dog as an adult because we'd always had family dogs. So like it was about like 6 months later, we were like, we should have got them both. Like we So what you're talking about earlier about all the hoops you had to go through to get a cat. Like for both Dally and Zool, because we were rescuing them, I had to, and it kills me, they'll let anybody be a parent, but to get a dog, I had to complete an application that had like 3 pages worth of questions. I had to submit an essay. And like the questions were like, what happens if someone in your family becomes allergic to dogs? What kind of space do you have in your backyard? How are you going to exercise this dog? What is your what kind of dogs did you have when you were growing up? We had to do an essay on like, why do you think you'd be a fit for this dog? I had to send pictures of our house, of our backyard from all different angles so they can make sure there was enough space for the dogs to run. I had to submit references. So they called the references, and like we had to submit the vet, someone not related to us, as a reference so they could make sure this dog was going to go to the right home. But and then like it was different for Gozer because he was a farm dog, so we just showed up with the money and they were like, away you go, right?
all Kay does at Concert Cats is literally just a vibe check. So you go to her cat charity to see the cat that you saw on the website, and then just to get to know them, and then she'll just sit and talk with you, and then just kind of have a feel for what you like. And then she's like, okay, and then when I bring the cat, we'll have a look around your house. And she's like, but obviously she's up front, and she's like, look, if I don't like what I see, you can't adopt the cat. But and that's literally it's just a vibe check. But like, she is not up for all that bureaucratic stuff. She's a very straightforward northerner. It's great.
I don't know how much they factored into it, because then at the end of the day, it was like whomever got their deposit check in first. Like I think they probably took like, if 10 people applied, they would probably like, okay, these 5 are the ones we're willing to let the dog go to. Whoever of these 5 gets their check in first.
Yeah, basically. Yeah.
Right? And it was us, baby.
And that's a good place to fade to black.
I think so. I think the conclusion is that dogs and cats are equally amazing.
But for different reasons.
Yes.
I'm good at different things.